My boyfriend called me ugly in front of his friends, then abandoned me at dinner, scoffing, "Be thankful I even dated you." I only smiled and stayed calm. By morning my phone lit up with 20 desperate calls. Imagine this. The man who ripped your heart out, shredded your self-worth, and publicly humiliated you, suddenly, desperately starts begging for your help. What would you do? Would you save him, or would you finally rewrite your own ending, ensuring he got exactly what he deserved? My phone vibrated relentlessly on the polished marble counter. 20 missed calls, all from the same insistent number. Julian Croft. Just 3 days earlier this very man had torn me down in front of his friends, labeling me ugly before abandoning me with a hefty $200 dinner bill and a gaping, bleeding wound in my chest. Now his name pulsed on the screen, a beacon of pure, desperate plea, while my morning coffee grew cold in my trembling hands. The early sun streamed through my apartment window, mocking the darkness his 3 a.m. voicemail had painted. I'd listened to it, of course. "Eleanor, please." His voice had cracked. "You have to call me back. Something's happening. Something's very wrong. The photos. How did you? I'm begging you." I allowed a slow, dangerous smile to bloom, a quiet hum of satisfaction in my chest, letting his calls vanish into voicemail once more. After all, a woman like me deserved to enjoy the unfolding drama. But how did I, Eleanor Vance, go from a heartbroken victim, weeping over a cruel breakup, to the one holding all the power? How did 72 brutal hours transform me into a force capable of making Julian Croft, the man who believed himself utterly untouchable, grovel for mercy? The answer began that night at the Gilded Spoon, and more importantly with what I uncovered about the man I thought I loved. Some secrets are buried so deep that their surfacing doesn't just sting. It utterly decimates everything in their path. Julian Croft was about to learn that the quiet, ugly girl he so carelessly discarded harbored secrets of her own. Hashtag the Gilded Spoon incident. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it was just 3 days prior. I sat opposite Julian at the Gilded Spoon, this incredibly elegant Italian restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on me later that this same place, where our 2-year story had begun, would witness its brutal public end. I was so blissfully unaware then. "You look beautiful tonight," he'd said, but I remember even then his eyes were already flitting around the room, perpetually searching for anyone, more captivating than his girlfriend of 2 years. I'd worn the emerald green dress he'd given me for Christmas. My auburn hair cascaded in soft waves, and I'd spent an hour perfecting my makeup. I truly believed I looked lovely. I believed he would too. God, how profoundly naive I was. "Thank you," I'd murmured, reaching across the table to touch his hand. His skin felt cold, distant. "Julian, is everything all right? You seem preoccupied lately." He withdrew his hand abruptly, signaling the waiter for another whiskey, his third. "Everything's perfectly fine, Eleanor. Can't a guy take his girlfriend out for dinner without getting the third degree?" His words stung, a sharp jab, but I pushed the feeling down. Julian had been swamped with work, he told me. His marketing firm was demanding, and I understood pressure. As a trauma nurse, I worked 60-hour weeks at the hospital. I knew stress intimately. Then, the moment that changed everything. "Hey, Julian." I turned to see 3 men approaching our table. I recognized them instantly. Liam Blackwood, Julian's college roommate with his impeccably styled blonde hair and tailored suits. Noah Sterling, who worked at the same firm and always made uncomfortable, borderline offensive jokes. And Finn Harper, who, despite dozens of introductions, never seemed to remember my name. "Guys." Julian's entire demeanor shifted. His face ignited with this frantic, almost desperate energy. "What are you doing here?" Liam responded, his eyes barely glancing in my direction. "We were just finishing up dinner with some clients. Mind if we join you for a drink?" I desperately wanted to refuse. This was our night. We hadn't had a proper date in weeks, and I'd yearned for us to reconnect. But Julian was already pulling out chairs before I could voice an objection. "Of course. Eleanor, you remember the guys." "Hi," I said softly, offering a small, forced wave. Noah nodded absently. Finn looked straight through me. Only Liam had the courtesy to offer a smirk. The next hour was agony. Pure, unadulterated agony. They discussed work, people I didn't know, and sports I didn't follow. Every single attempt I made to contribute was met with an interruption or an abrupt change of topic. Julian roared at their jokes. Jokes that weren't funny, sometimes cruel, always making me shrink further and further into my seat. "So Julian," Noah said, leaning back and eyeing me with a gaze I couldn't quite decipher. "When are you going to upgrade?" The table fell silent. Julian's whiskey glass paused midair. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Come on, man," Liam interjected, lowering his voice to what he likely thought was a whisper but wasn't. It echoed through the suddenly quiet room. "You know what we mean. You're successful. Good looking. That new promotion is on the horizon. Don't you think it's time for an adjustment? My blood turned to ice. They were discussing me right in front of me as if I were utterly invisible. Guys, Julian said, but there was no conviction, no anger, no defense for the woman he supposedly loved. I mean, look around this place, Finn added, gesturing broadly at the elegant restaurant teeming with beautiful couples. Look at the caliber of women here. Don't you want someone who fits? I stared at Julian, silently pleading for him to intervene, to defend me, to recall the times he'd called me the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. How he loved my smile, my laugh, my enthusiasm for old movies and stray cats. Instead, Julian drained his whiskey and set the glass down with a sharp, chilling clink. You know what? He said, his voice gaining strength, his gaze hardening on me. You're right. The restaurant noise faded to a distant hum. My heart ceased its beat. The world tilted sideways. Julian, my voice came out barely a whisper. He turned to me then and I saw a stranger. The warmth of the man I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. His dark brown eyes, once a haven, now looked at me as if I were something distasteful stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Eleanor, this isn't working anymore. What? What do you mean? The three men leaned back in their chairs, settling in for a show. Liam actually smiled. I mean us. Julian gestured vaguely between us. I'm moving up in the world and I need someone who can move up with me. Someone who fits the image I'm trying to create. Image, I felt like I was drowning. Julian, I don't understand. What image? What are you talking about? Look, Eleanor. He sighed as if this conversation were a tedious chore, breaking up with me just another item on his to-do list. You're a nice girl. You're adequate. But let's be honest here. The word adequate struck me like a physical blow. Let's be honest about what? Julian looked around at his nodding friends, drawing strength from their sickening approval. He sat up straighter, locking his gaze with mine. You're just not pretty enough for where I'm going in life. The words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. I felt every person at nearby tables turn to look, their pity and curiosity burning into my skin. Julian, please don't do this, I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. Not here. Not like this. When would be a good time, Eleanor? When would be the right time to tell you that you're simply not enough? Noah snorted. Damn dude. Harsh but necessary. Liam added, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. You want to know the truth? Julian continued, his voice rising, now ensuring other diners were definitely staring. The truth is, I've been embarrassed to be seen with you for months. My colleagues ask about my girlfriend and I make excuses not to bring you to company events because you don't fit. You don't belong in my world. Each word was a knife between my ribs. I gripped the table edge so hard my knuckles turned white. Julian, stop. Please. You work in a hospital dealing with blood and vomit all day. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You shop at discount stores and think Olive Garden is fine dining. And you. He paused, looking me up and down with disgust. You're just not attractive enough to make any of that worth overlooking. Finn whistled low. Jesus, Julian. What? She needs to hear this. She needs to understand reality. Tears threatened, burning behind my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of them, refused to give them the satisfaction. So that's it. I managed to ask, my voice barely a thread. 2 years and that's it? 2 years too long, Julian said, standing and pulling out his wallet. He tossed a single $20 bill onto the table. That should cover my drinks. You can handle the rest, right? Consider it a farewell gift. The dinner bill was over $200. I was a trauma nurse, not a brain surgeon. $200 was 2 weeks' worth of groceries. Julian, I can't afford. You'll figure it out, he said, already putting on his jacket. You always do. His 3 friends rose with him, a pack of hyenas trailing their leader. See you around, Eleanor, Liam said with mock sympathy. Maybe. They began walking toward the door, laughing and chatting as if they hadn't just decimated a human being, as if they hadn't just thrown 2 years of my life into the garbage. But Julian wasn't finished yet. As they reached the restaurant entrance, he turned back, raising his voice loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you for as long as I did. The laughter that followed them out echoed in my ears like gunshots. I sat there in the suddenly too quiet restaurant, surrounded by strangers staring at my humiliation. The waiter approached cautiously as if I might lash out. Miss, will you be needing anything else? Just the check, please, I whispered. When he brought it, I stared at the total with numb disbelief. $237.43. More than I had in my checking account until payday. I smiled, not from happiness or acceptance, but because something inside me had fractured. And when it broke, it exposed something I'd kept hidden for a very long time. Something Julian Croft had no idea existed. Something that was about to make his life very, very complicated. I paid the bill with my credit card, a quiet promise forming in my heart, and walked out of the Gilded Spoon with my head held high. The valet brought my 10-year-old Honda. Actually, it was a 9-year-old Civic I'd bought with cash because I believed in living within my means. Julian had always made comments about my car, my clothes, my choices. I thought he was joking, trying to motivate me. Now I understood he'd been cataloging my inadequacies for months. The drive home to my modest suburban apartment was a blur of streetlights and tears I refused to let fall. Once inside, I deadbolted the door, kicked off the heels that had pinched all night, and walked to my bathroom mirror. Ugly, I said to my reflection. The woman staring back had auburn hair that caught the light like copper, green eyes men had once called mesmerizing, and delicate features reminiscent of Renaissance paintings. I wasn't a supermodel, but I'd never considered myself ugly. Thought I was pretty. More importantly, I thought Julian thought I was pretty. Adequate, I continued, tasting the word like poison. I'd graduated summa cum laude from nursing school, worked in trauma units in 3 different cities, saved lives, comforted families, and made a difference every single day. I'd never considered myself adequate. I'd thought I was accomplished. But Julian was right about one thing. I wasn't who I appeared to be. I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet door. Behind my work scrubs and casual clothes, pushed to the very back, was a garment bag I hadn't touched in over 3 years. Inside, a black cocktail dress that cost more than Julian made in a month. Beside it, jewelry that could have paid off his student loans. At the bottom, shoes that were works of art and a clutch purse handmade in Italy. I pulled out my laptop and logged into a bank account I hadn't accessed since moving to this city and reinventing myself as simply Eleanor, the nurse. Current balance, $2,847,392.67. And that was just one account. I scrolled through my portfolio. Tech stocks, real estate, municipal bonds, all performing beautifully just as my financial advisor had predicted. Then I opened my other laptop, the one hidden in a false bottom of my dresser drawer, the one with software that cost more than most people's cars. It was time to remember who I used to be. My name is Eleanor Vance, and yes, I'm a trauma nurse. But I'm also the daughter of tech mogul Marcus Vance, founder and CEO of Vance Industries. I'm worth more than Julian and his 3 imbecile friends would earn in their combined lifetimes. 3 years ago, after my father's death, I inherited not just his money but his company. A company I'd helped him build from the ground up, starting with coding lessons at 12 and progressing to corporate strategy by 25. But inheriting billions at 26 taught me a valuable, brutal lesson. When people know you're rich, they rarely love you. They love your money, your connections, your power, what you can do for them. So I made a choice. I appointed professional managers to run Vance Industries, moved to a new city, and started over as a trauma nurse, a profession I'd always wanted to experience. I lived modestly, drove ordinary cars, shopped at regular stores. I wanted to find someone who would love me for me, not for what I could give them. I thought I'd found that person in Julian Croft. How terribly wrong I'd been. I opened my secure messaging system and typed a quick message to my head of security, Beatrice Shaw, a former CIA operative who'd worked for my father for 15 years. She was a force of nature. Vic, need a deep background check on Julian Croft. DOB March 15, 1992. Currently employed at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Also need full profiles on Liam Blackwood, Noah Sterling and Finn Harper. All associates of the target. Need everything. Finances, relationships, secrets, weaknesses. Timeline, 48 hours. The response arrived in less than 5 minutes. Understood. Anything I should know about the level of detail required? I smiled at my reflection in the laptop screen, a cold, calculating glint in my eyes. Find everything, Vic, leave no stone unturned. They hurt someone I care about. Will do. Sorry to hear that. Do you need additional resources? Not yet, but keep the team on standby. I closed the laptop and walked back to my closet. Tomorrow I would go to work, smile at my patients, and pretend to be heartbroken Eleanor Vance, the dumped nurse who couldn't afford a fancy dinner. But tonight I had planning to do. Julian Croft had made the mistake of believing I was weak, ordinary, and beneath him. He'd humiliated me in public because he thought I had no power, no resources, no ability to fight back. He was about to learn that sometimes the quietest people are quiet for a very good reason. #####the dominoes fall. The next morning at the hospital, I moved through my rounds like a ghost. I checked on Mrs. Rodriguez, recovering from a heart attack. I helped Dr. Thompson stabilize a car crash victim. I comforted a scared teenager who'd overdosed at a party. Normal Eleanor Vance things, the kind of adequate work that adequate people do. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend and fellow nurse, Chloe Davis. Girl, you look like hell. Coffee break. No, I lied, keeping my expression neutral. Chloe was the only person in this city who knew anything about my past, and even she didn't know everything. I'd met her during nursing school and told her I came from money but wanted to make my own way. She thought money meant upper middle class, not that I could buy the entire hospital we worked in without checking my bank balance. Okay, spill, Chloe said when we sat in the hospital cafeteria with our terrible coffee. You're doing that thing where you smile but your eyes look dead. What happened? Julian broke up with me. That bastard. How? I recounted the story, watching her face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally, pure righteous rage. He called you what? In public. Chloe's voice carried across the cafeteria, drawing stares. That piece of garbage. Eleanor, honey, you know he's wrong, right? You know you're beautiful. Do I? I asked quietly, a tiny seed of doubt still lingering, even as I plotted his downfall. Yes, you absolutely do. You're stunning. You're brilliant. You're kind. And you save lives for a living. Julian Croft is a walking pile of mediocrity in an expensive suit. You're worth 100 of him. If only she knew how literally true that was. It's fine, I said, a dangerous calm settling over me. I'm fine. No, you're not. You're planning something. You get this look when you're planning something. It's the same look you had when you figured out how to prove that Dr. Miller was stealing medication. Chloe knew me well. Too well. I'm not planning anything. What would I plan? I'm just a nurse, remember? Just adequate. Don't you dare, Chloe said, pointing her fork at me like a weapon. Don't you dare let that jerk make you believe you're anything less than amazing. My phone buzzed. A message from Beatrice Shaw. Initial sweep complete. Meet tonight. Your place 9:00 p.m. I typed back quickly. Confirmed. Who's that? Chloe asked. Wrong number. I lied smoothly. Listen, I should get back to work. Mrs. Rodriguez needs her medication adjusted. Eleanor. Chloe grabbed my hand. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. I know you're hurt, but don't let him turn you into someone you're not. I squeezed her hand and gave her my most reassuring smile. Don't worry about me, Chloe. I'm going to be just fine. At exactly 9 p.m., Beatrice Shaw knocked on my apartment door. She looked exactly as she had 3 years ago. Platinum blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of understated elegance that came from years of operating in high-stakes environments. Eleanor, she said, embracing me briefly. You look good. Civilian life agrees with you. Thanks, Vic. Come in. She set her briefcase on my kitchen table and opened it with practiced efficiency. I have to say, when you vanished into suburban nursing life, I never expected to hear from you again. Your father would be proud, by the way. The company's stock price has increased 40% since you took over. The managers you recommended are excellent. They are, but they're not you. Beatrice pulled out a thick file. Now, let's discuss why you want to destroy Julian Croft. I didn't say I wanted to destroy him, I countered, a flicker of amusement in my eyes. Beatrice gave me a look that could have frozen water. Eleanor, I've known you since you were 16. I know the difference between a routine background check and a nuclear option investigation. This is a nuclear option. I sank into my chair. Tell me what you found. Julian Croft is a textbook narcissist with delusions of grandeur and financial problems he hides well. Beatrice opened the file with a flourish. On the surface, he looks good. Marketing manager at Pinnacle, nice apartment, expensive clothes, drives the leased BMW. But dig deeper. She spread photos and documents across my table like she was laying out a hand of cards. His credit cards are maxed out. He owes $43,000 in student loans. His rent is 2 months behind and he's been moving money between accounts to avoid overdraft fees. The expensive lifestyle? It's all smoke and mirrors. What about his job? Pinnacle Marketing is struggling. They've been quietly laying people off for 6 months. Julian's position is safe for now, but barely. And there's something else. Beatrice's voice dropped, a chilling undertone. He's been embezzling. My blood ran cold, a different kind of cold than before. This was the cold of a plan forming. What? Small amounts. 100 here, 200 there. He's been skimming from client expense accounts and billing personal charges as business expenses. I estimate he's stolen about $15,000 over the past year. Does Pinnacle know? Not yet. But they will once someone knows where to look. Beatrice smiled, a predatory glint in her sharp blue eyes. The question is, do you want them to find out sooner rather than later? I stared at Julian's photo. He looked so confident, so smug. Even in a corporate headshot, his arrogance radiated through the camera. What about his friends? Liam Blackwood is drowning in gambling debts. Noah Sterling is having an affair with his boss's wife. Finn Harper has a sealed juvenile record that would definitely affect his security clearance at his defense contractor job. How sealed? Let's just say it involves violence and leave it at that. I absorbed this information, feeling pieces of a plan clicking into place. Vic, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I want you to quietly tip off Pinnacle about Julian's embezzlement, but don't make it obvious. Make it look like routine accounting caught the discrepancies. Beatrice nodded. Done. What else? Can you arrange for Liam Blackwood's gambling debts to be called in? All at once. Easily. His primary creditor is someone we've done business with. And Noah's affair. I can make sure his boss finds out, anonymously of course. And Finn's record. Beatrice's smile was sharp as a blade. Let me worry about that. I walked to my window and looked out at the quiet suburban street. 3 days ago, I'd been just another woman trying to find love in a complicated world. Now I was planning the systematic undoing of 4 men who thought they were untouchable. Are you sure about this? Beatrice asked quietly. Once we start, there's no going back. These men will be ruined. I thought about Julian's voice carrying across the gilded spoon. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you. I thought about the laughter that followed them out. I thought about every woman who'd been told their worth was measured by someone else's cruel gaze. They should have thought of that before they decided to humiliate someone they believed was powerless. Beatrice began packing her files. Consider it done. But Eleanor, this is just the beginning. From what I found, Julian Croft has made a lot of enemies. A lot of people would be very interested to learn about his financial situation and his creative accounting. After Beatrice left, I sat in my quiet apartment and opened my laptop. I pulled up Julian's social media profiles, his LinkedIn, his company bio. In every photo he looked successful, confident, happy. By the time I was done with him, all of that would be gone. But I wasn't interested in just ruining his life. That would be too simple, too clean. I wanted him to understand exactly how it felt to be humiliated in public. I wanted him to know what it was like when the whole world could see your shame. I wanted him to beg. And then I wanted him to know exactly who had brought him down. My phone rang at 3 a.m. Julian's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The plan was just beginning. The first domino fell on Tuesday. I was restocking medical supplies in the trauma unit when Chloe burst through the doors, her eyes wide with excitement. Eleanor, did you see the news about that marketing company? Pinnacle something. My hands never paused in their work, but my heart rate spiked, a surge of adrenaline. What news? Embezzlement scandal. Apparently, some manager was stealing from client accounts. They fired him and called the police. It's all over the local business news. I pulled out my phone and navigated to the local news website. There, in black and white, was the headline, Local Marketing Manager Arrested for Embezzlement. Julian's corporate headshot stared back at me from the screen. Asterisk, the accused, Julian Taylor, 30, allegedly stole approximately $15,000 from client expense accounts over the past year. Pinnacle Marketing Solutions discovered the discrepancies during a routine audit and immediately contacted authorities. Taylor was arrested at his workplace Tuesday morning. Asterisk, I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. Wow, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. That's terrible. Isn't that your ex-boyfriend? Chloe asked, peering at my phone screen. Yeah, it is. Holy cow, Eleanor. I mean, I know he was a jerk, but I never thought he was a criminal. You never really know someone, I murmured, a chilling sense of satisfaction unfurling within me. The second domino fell on Wednesday. Beatrice sent me a text with a link to a local gossip blog. Prominent defense contractor employee loses security clearance after juvenile record surfaces. Finn Harper's photo accompanied an article detailing how his sealed juvenile record for assault had somehow found its way to the security office. Without his clearance, he couldn't do his job. Without his job, he couldn't afford his mortgage, his car payments, or his carefully cultivated lifestyle. Oops. The third domino fell on Thursday. Noah Sterling's affair made it into the society pages when his boss's wife, in a spectacular fit of rage, threw a very public, very expensive vase at him in the middle of an upscale restaurant. The accompanying photo showed Noah covered in water and white roses, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. His boss fired him the next day. Poetic justice. But Liam Blackwood's downfall was my masterpiece. Beatrice had arranged for all his gambling debts to be called in simultaneously on Friday morning. When Liam couldn't pay, his creditors made it clear that his kneecaps were on the line. Desperate, he did what desperate people do. He made terrible decisions. He tried to steal money from his own company. Unlike Julian, Liam was clumsy about it. He was caught within hours. By Friday evening, he was in jail alongside his former friend. The pack was broken. Hashtag the begging calls. By Saturday morning, Julian's entire circle had collapsed. That's when he started calling me. The first call came at 6 a.m. I was making coffee, humming quietly to myself when my phone rang. Eleanor. Eleanor, thank God you answered. Julian. I injected confusion into my voice, a carefully crafted performance. Why are you calling me? I thought you said, look, I know what I said at the restaurant was wrong. I was drunk. I was showing off for the guys. I didn't mean it. You seemed pretty clear about what you meant. Please, Eleanor. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I've been arrested. I've lost my job and I need help. What kind of help? Legal help. Financial help. I can't afford a good lawyer and the public defender they gave me looks like he's barely out of law school. I let silence stretch between us, savoring the moment. Eleanor, are you there? I'm here. I'm just confused about why you think I'd help you. You said I was ugly, remember? You said I was adequate, at best. You said I should be grateful you dated me. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. You're beautiful. You're amazing. And I was an idiot to let you go. So you want me back? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. We can work this out. We can. I hung up. He called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Eleanor, please don't hang up on me. I love you. I know I have a shitty way of showing it, but I love you. Please call me back. His voice was raw, pathetic. The second call came 2 hours later. Eleanor, something really weird is happening. It's not just me. Liam, Noah, Finn, we're all going through hell right now. Liam and I are both arrested. Noah lost his job. Finn lost his clearance. It's like someone is targeting us. Now that was interesting. He was starting to connect the dots. That does sound strange, I said carefully, a subtle hint of amusement in my tone. Right? I mean, what are the odds? All 4 of us having disasters in the same week. Pretty low, I'd imagine. Exactly. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I think someone is messing with us. Someone with serious resources. Like who? I don't know. A competitor maybe? Or someone we pissed off. He was getting closer to the truth than I'd expected. Julian was stupid but not completely oblivious. Julian, I think you're being paranoid. Sometimes bad things just happen all at once. Come on, Eleanor. You're smart. You see patterns at the hospital all the time. Doesn't this seem orchestrated to you? I think you're looking for someone to blame for your own bad choices. My bad choices? Eleanor, I didn't choose to have someone discover my financial irregularities. I was careful. Very careful. Maybe not careful enough. There was a long pause. You know what? You're right. I made mistakes and now I'm paying for them, but that doesn't change the fact that I need help. And you're the only person I trust. The only person you trust? Really? I almost laughed at the irony. Yes. You're the only person who ever cared about me for me. Not for what I could give them. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. What exactly do you want from me, Julian? A loan. Just enough to hire a decent lawyer. I'll pay you back as soon as I get back on my feet. How much? $50,000. I almost laughed out loud. $50,000. I made that much in investment interest every few days. Julian, I'm a trauma nurse. Where would I get $50,000? You could get $50,000. I can't qualify for a loan that big. Then what about a smaller amount? 20,000? 10,000? Anything would help. I pretended to consider this. I might be able to scrape together 5,000. But Julian, after what you said to me, after how you treated me, why should I help you? Because you're a good person. Because you save lives every day. Because somewhere deep down you still care about me. He was right about one thing. I still cared about him. I cared about watching him squirm. I need time to think about it. How much time? Eleanor, I don't have a few days. My hearing is Monday. If I don't have a lawyer then, you'll have a public defender. Lots of people get by with public defenders. Lots of people go to prison with public defenders. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started stealing. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Eleanor, do you hate me? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. No, Julian, I don't hate you. It was the truth. Hate was too small an emotion for what I felt. Hate was what you felt for someone who'd hurt you but was still on your level. What I felt for Julian Croft was something much more dangerous. I felt nothing. He was a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced, a stain to be cleaned up. Thank you, he whispered. I'll call you tomorrow. Sure. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and transferred $5,000 from one of my investment accounts to my regular checking account. Not because I was going to give it to Julian, but because I wanted him to see exactly how much I was worth when the time came to reveal the truth. The third call came Sunday night and Julian sounded different. Desperate, a new note of fear in his voice. Eleanor, I've been thinking about who it is. My blood turned to ice water. Who? Your family. What if they found out what I said to you? What if they decided to teach me a lesson? I almost admired his intuition. He was completely wrong about the details, but he grasped the essential truth. Someone with resources was systematically destroying his life. Julian, my family doesn't have the kind of money or connections to do something like this. Are you sure? I mean, really sure? Because the timing is too perfect. I break up with you in the most public, humiliating way possible, and then within a week my entire world falls apart. That's quite an ego you have there. You think my family cares enough about me to launch some kind of revenge plot? Don't they? The question hung in the air like a blade. Julian, you're being paranoid. My family barely has enough money to cover their own bills, much less hire private investigators or whatever you think they did. Then explain it. Explain how 4 successful guys all get destroyed in the same week. You weren't that successful, I said quietly. You just pretended to be. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe the universe is just correcting an imbalance. Maybe you all got away with things for too long and now the bill is coming due. That's not how the world works, Eleanor. Isn't it? The 4th call came Monday morning at 3 a.m. I was awake anyway, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea, watching the sunrise and thinking about justice. Eleanor, Julian's voice was raw, broken, stripped of all its former bravado. I'm sorry. I'm so King sorry. What happened? My hearing went badly. They're talking about 18 months in prison. 18 months, Eleanor, and that's if I plead guilty. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really sorry? Because sometimes I wonder if you're happy about this. I took a slow sip of my tea. Why would I be happy about this? Because of what I said to you. Because I hurt you, Julian. I wasn't the kind of person who took pleasure in other people's suffering. It was mostly true. I didn't take pleasure in suffering in general. Just his suffering. Just the suffering of men who thought they could crush other people without consequences. I know you're not. That's why I'm calling. That's why I need you to help me. I told you I need time to think about the loan. Not the loan. Something else. What? I need you to be a character witness. The request hit me like a physical blow, almost making me gasp. What? At my sentencing hearing. I need people to testify that I'm not a bad person, that I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to go to prison. You knew me better than anyone. If you could just tell them about the good times we had, about how I was with you when we were alone. Julian, please. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I was cruel and stupid and wrong about everything, but Eleanor, if you could see me now, I'm broken. I'm completely broken. I could hear it in his voice. The arrogance was gone. The confidence was gone. The casual cruelty that had allowed him to humiliate me in public was gone. All that was left was fear and desperation. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I'll think about it, I said. Really? Really? Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleanor. I promise you, if you help me get through this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll be the man you deserved from the beginning. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and smiled. Julian Croft thought he was manipulating me. He thought he could use my kindness, my love, my forgiving nature to save himself from the consequences of his own actions. He had no idea that the kind, forgiving Eleanor Vance he'd fallen in love with had died in The Gilded Spoon 3 weeks ago. In her place was someone much more interesting, someone who understood that mercy was a luxury only the powerful could afford to give. And I was feeling anything but generous. The reckoning. The courthouse was exactly what I'd expected. Imposing gray stone, high ceilings, and the kind of institutional lighting that made everyone look guilty. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, wearing a simple navy dress and my most innocent expression. Julian sat at the defendant's table with his overworked public defender, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting gray ensemble that screamed borrowed from a relative. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked, in other words, like a man who was finally facing reality. When the judge called for character witnesses, I stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to speak on behalf of the defendant. Julian's head whipped around, and the relief that flooded his face was almost painful to watch. He mouthed thank you at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I walked to the witness stand with measured steps, placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. State your name and relationship to the defendant, the judge instructed. My name is Eleanor Vance. Julian Croft was my boyfriend for 2 years. Was? Yes, Your Honor. We broke up recently. I see. And despite this breakup, you're here to speak on his behalf. I am. Please tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Croft. I looked directly at Julian, who was watching me with desperate hope, a hopeful smile playing on his lips. Your Honor, I met Julian 2 years ago and I thought I knew him well. He could be charming, funny, and attentive when he wanted to be. He took me to nice restaurants, bought me gifts, and told me he loved me. Julian nodded encouragingly, his smile widening slightly. However, I continued, my voice firm and clear, I also saw another side of Julian Croft, a side that I think is relevant to these proceedings. The hope in Julian's eyes flickered just a little. What kind of side, Miss Vance? Julian has a problem with honesty, Your Honor. Not just in his professional life, as we've seen with the embezzlement charges, but in his personal relationships as well. Julian's lawyer started to object, but I continued, my voice unwavering. He lied to me constantly about his financial situation. He would take me to expensive restaurants and then claim he'd forgotten his wallet, leaving me to pay bills I couldn't afford. He borrowed money from me repeatedly, promising to pay it back, and never did. How much money? The judge asked, his gaze fixed on me. I'd prepared for this question. Over the past week, I'd carefully documented every dinner I'd paid for, every loan I'd given him, every expense he'd pushed onto me while maintaining his illusion of success. Approximately $3,000 over the course of our relationship, Your Honor. Julian's face had gone white, his mouth a thin, grim line. But the financial deception wasn't the worst part, I continued, my voice growing stronger, a cold fire in my chest. The worst part was how he treated me when he thought it didn't matter anymore. Can you elabo? 3 weeks ago, Julian took me to the Gilded Spoon restaurant. While we were there, some of his friends joined us. In front of these men, and in front of a restaurant full of strangers, Julian told me I was ugly, that I wasn't good enough for him, that I should be grateful he dated me at all. He then left me to pay a $200 dinner bill and walked out, announcing loudly that a girl like me should be grateful he even dated me. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. This happened 3 weeks ago? Yes, Your Honor. And yet you're here today to speak on his behalf. I'm here today to tell the truth about Julian Croft's character. The truth is that he's a man who believes rules don't apply to him, whether those rules involve taking money that doesn't belong to him or treating other people with basic human decency. Julian was staring at me like I'd grown a second head, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. He called me after his arrest, begging for help, not because he was sorry for how he treated me, but because he needed money for a lawyer. He asked me to loan him $50,000. Money he knew I didn't have. And when I couldn't, he settled for asking for smaller amounts. Even now, even after everything he's done, Julian Croft's primary concern is what other people can do for him. I turned to look directly at Julian, letting him feel the full weight of my gaze. Your Honor, I don't believe Julian is evil, but I do believe he's selfish, manipulative, and completely unable to accept responsibility for his actions. The embezzlement charges don't surprise me at all. They're exactly the kind of thing someone would do if they believed the world owed them a lifestyle they hadn't earned. The judge was writing notes, nodding slowly, a quiet understanding dawning on his face. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Miss Vance? Just this, Your Honor. Julian asked me to come here today because he thought I still loved him and he thought love would make me lie for him. He thought I was weak and grateful and easily manipulated. He was wrong about all of those things, just like he was wrong when he thought he could steal money without getting caught. I stood up from the witness stand, a feeling of absolute triumph washing over me. Julian Croft isn't a victim of circumstance. He's a man who made deliberate choices to lie, steal, and hurt other people. And now he's facing the consequences of those choices. In my opinion, those consequences are long overdue. The silence that followed my testimony was deafening. I walked back to my seat, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. Julian's lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Julian wasn't listening. He was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time, his face a mixture of shock and dawning horror. When the judge announced a recess, Julian broke away from his lawyer and approached me in the hallway, his face contorted in a furious snarl. What the hell was that? He demanded, his voice a harsh whisper. That was the truth, I said simply. The truth? Eleanor, you just destroyed any chance I had of getting a light sentence. Did I? I thought I was being a character witness. I witnessed your character and I shared what I saw. You vindictive B*TC. I can't believe I ever thought I loved you. I smiled, a cold, serene smile. There's the Julian I know. For a while there, with all the begging and crying, I thought prison had changed you already. You think this is funny? I think justice is beautiful. Julian grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin, his eyes blazing with anger and fear. You have no idea who you're messing with. Don't I? Something in my voice, a quiet power, made him loosen his grip, his eyes widening. You want to know something interesting, Julian? You were right when you said someone was targeting you and your friends. Someone with resources, someone with connections, someone who could orchestrate the kind of systematic destruction you've all experienced. His eyes widened even further, a terrible, dawning realization. You were just wrong about who it was. What are you saying? I'm saying that adequate little Eleanor Vance, the ugly trauma nurse who should have been grateful for your attention, isn't quite what she appears to be. Julian's face cycled through confusion, fear, and finally, terrible understanding. It was you. Of course. But how? You don't have that kind of money, that kind of power. Don't I? I pulled out my phone and showed him my banking app. The screen displayed a balance that made his embezzlement look like pocket change. My name is Eleanor Vance, I said quietly, letting each word land. But my maiden name was Vance, as in Vance Industries. As in the tech company worth about $12 billion. As in the inheritance I've been managing very successfully for the past 3 years while pretending to be a simple nurse. Julian's legs gave out. He slumped against the courthouse wall, staring at me as if I were a ghost, his face utterly devoid of color. You're rich. I am wealthy beyond your comprehension, Julian. I could have bought your entire company without noticing the expense. I could have paid your legal fees with my daily investment returns. I could have made all your problems disappear with a single phone call. Then why didn't you? Because you called me ugly in front of a restaurant full of people and left me to pay for dinner. The simplicity of it seemed to break something in his brain. That's it? That's why you destroyed my life. Because I was mean to you at dinner. You humiliated me in public because you thought I was powerless. You were wrong. Eleanor, please, if you have all that money, if you have all that power, you can fix this. You can make this go away. Please, I'm begging you. Why would I do that? Because you loved me once. Because somewhere inside, the woman who loved me is still there. I studied his face, taking in the desperation, the fear, the complete collapse of everything he thought he knew about the world. You're right, I said finally. The woman who loved you is still here. Hope flashed across his features. But she died in the Gilded Spoon 3 weeks ago when the man she trusted with her heart decided to destroy her in front of strangers for the entertainment of his friends. Julian, the woman standing in front of you now is someone else entirely. Someone who understands that mercy is a luxury, and forgiveness is a gift that has to be earned. What do you want? Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want you to go to prison, Julian. I want you to have 18 months to think about what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides you're disposable. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. I've arranged for you to have the best possible experience while you're incarcerated. What does that mean? It means I made some donations to the prison system. Donations that will ensure you have a private cell, good medical care, access to educational programs, and protection from the more dangerous inmates. Julian stared at me in horror, a new, deeper fear replacing the desperation. You're going to let me go to prison, but you're going to make sure I'm comfortable while I'm there? I told you I'm not evil. I just want you to have time to think. Think about what? Think about how it feels to be powerless. Think about how it feels when someone you trust betrays you. Think about how it feels to be dismissed and discarded by someone who thinks they're better than you. The bailiff announced that court was resuming. I have to go, I said. Good luck with your sentencing, Julian. As I walked away, I heard him calling after me, a desperate wail. Eleanor. Honor, wait. We can work this out. We can. But I was already gone. The lessons learned. Julian Croft was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. I wasn't in the courtroom when it happened. I was at work, helping Dr. Martinez stabilize a construction worker who'd fallen from scaffolding. But Beatrice sent me a text with the news. Package delivered. Target acquired. Mission accomplished. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and reflected on the past month. For men who'd thought they were untouchable had learned otherwise. For men who'd believed they could humiliate someone without consequences had discovered they were terribly, spectacularly wrong. But I wasn't done yet. 6 months into Julian's sentence, I received a letter. It was handwritten on prison stationery, my name in careful block letters on the envelope. I could feel the weight of it, the quiet desperation contained within. Dear Eleanor, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, about what I did, and about who you really are. You were right about everything. I was selfish, cruel, and completely blind to what I had. I treated you terribly because I thought you couldn't fight back. I thought you were weak, independent, and grateful. I was wrong about all of it. I've been thinking about something you said in the courthouse hallway. You said the woman who loved me died in the Gilded Spoon. I think you're wrong about that. I think that woman was never really there at all. I think you've been playing a game since the day we met and I was too stupid to realize it. I think you've been watching me, studying me, waiting for me to show you who I really was. And when I finally did, when I revealed exactly how shallow and cruel I could be, you decided it was time to end the game. I don't blame you for that. I would have done the same thing if I were smart enough and powerful enough to pull it off. What I can't figure out is why you dated me in the first place. With your money, your resources, your intelligence, you could have had anyone. Why me? Why waste 2 years on someone like me? I think it's because you were lonely. I think being that rich, that powerful makes it impossible to trust anyone. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an angle. You tried an experiment. You pretended to be someone ordinary to see if you could find someone who would love you for who you were, not what you could give them. The experiment failed. I failed. I'm sorry for that, Eleanor. Not just sorry I got caught. Not just sorry I'm in prison. But truly sorry that I proved you can't trust anyone. Sorry that I took your hope and crushed it in front of a restaurant full of strangers. You probably won't believe this, but I did love you. Not the real you. I never knew the real you. But I loved the woman you pretended to be. I loved your kindness, your dedication to helping people, your laugh when you watched old movies. I loved how excited you got about small things and how you cried during commercials with dogs. I just loved all of that less than I loved impressing my friends. I don't know if the real Eleanor Vance has any of those qualities, or if they were all part of the performance. But if they were real, if any part of the woman I fell in love with was real, then I'm sorry I wasn't good enough for her. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I'm not writing this to ask you to get me out of prison early. I know I deserve to be here. And honestly, prison is probably the safest place for me right now. Liam Blackwood is in the cell next to mine, and he's told me some interesting stories about what happened to Noah and Finn after they got out. Apparently, Noah's wife left him and took half of nothing, which was still more than he deserved. And Finn, well, let's just say that losing his security clearance was the least of his problems. Funny how many people have grudges against a guy who used to beat up kids when he was 16. I'm writing this because I want you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. I did love you as much as someone like me is capable of loving anyone. And I think somewhere under all that anger and calculation you loved me too. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than either of us expected to get. I hope you find someone worthy of the real you, whoever that is. I hope you find someone who sees your wealth and your power and your intelligence, and still loves the woman who rescues stray cats and cries at movies. I hope you're happy, Eleanor. You deserve happiness more than anyone I've ever known. Thank you for the private cell and the protection. You didn't have to do that. The fact that you did tells me that the kind woman I fell in love with was real, at least partly. That means something to me. I read the letter 3 times, then walked to my kitchen and poured myself another glass of wine. Julian Croft was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. He'd understood things about me that I'd barely understood myself. He was right about the experiment. I had been testing him, testing all of them, to see if genuine love was possible when money and power were removed from the equation. He was right about the loneliness too. When you can buy anything, when you can solve any problem with a phone call, when people's entire demeanor changes once they learn your net worth, it becomes impossible to know who actually cares about you. But he was wrong about one thing. The woman he'd fallen in love with wasn't a performance. She was real. She'd been real when she'd nursed him through the flu. Real when she'd laughed at his terrible jokes. Real when she'd fallen asleep in his arms watching old movies. She'd been real right up until the moment he'd called her ugly in front of a restaurant full of strangers. Now she was gone. And in her place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. I walked to my laptop and opened my secure messaging system. Beatrice, I need you to arrange something for me. What do you need? Julian Croft sentence. I want it reduced to time served. There was a long pause before Beatrice responded, a hint of surprise in her tone. Are you sure about that? He's only been in 6 months. You went to a lot of trouble to put him there. I'm sure. Can you make it happen? Of course. Any particular reason? He passed the test. What test? The final exam. I don't understand. I stared at Julian's letter, at his careful handwriting, at words that had cost him something to write. He figured out who I really am, Beatrice. Not just the money, not just the power, but the person underneath. And he's genuinely sorry for what he did. Not because he got caught, but because he hurt someone he loved. So, you're going to forgive him? No. I'm going to free him. There is a difference. Eleanor, Beatrice said, a rare note of genuine concern in her voice. Make the arrangements. Vic Julian Croft has learned his lesson. I was restocking medical supplies in the trauma unit when Chloe burst through the doors with a familiar look of excitement. Eleanor, guess who I saw at the coffee shop this morning? I didn't have to guess. I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Julian Croft. Chloe's face fell, a mix of disappointment and pity. How did you know? Lucky guess. How did he look? Honestly terrible. I mean, not terrible, but different. Older. Sadder. He asked about you. What did you tell him? I told him you were doing great, that you'd been promoted to head trauma nurse, and that you were dating someone new. 2 out of 3 were true. I had been promoted and I was doing great. The dating part was a fiction I'd asked Chloe to maintain. What did he say? He said he was glad you were happy. And then he asked me to give you something. Chloe pulled an envelope from her pocket. My name was written across it in the same careful block letters I remembered from his prison letter. Did he say anything else? He said to tell you that he understood why you did what you did, and that he hoped someday you might forgive him enough to read what he wrote. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Chloe, what do you think I should do about Julian? Honestly, Eleanor, I think you should stay as far away from him as possible. I don't care how sorry he is or how much prison changed him. What he did to you is unforgivable. And if he really has changed, then good for him. He can go change for someone else. That evening, I sat in my apartment with the envelope in my hands. Outside my window, the suburban street was quiet, peaceful, normal. Inside, I was anything but. Finally, I opened it. Eleanor, I'm not supposed to contact you. I'm sure you could have me arrested for harassment, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But there are things I need to say, and I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to say them. I know what you did. I know you arranged for my early release, just like I know you arranged for my comfortable stay in prison. I know because the same lawyer who told me about my sentence reduction also told me that an anonymous benefactor had been covering his fees. Anonymous benefactor, right? I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I'm not writing this to ask for a second chance or to beg for forgiveness or to try to win you back. I know that ship sailed a long time ago and it's not coming back to shore. I'm writing this to say thank you. Thank you for showing me who I really was. Thank you for holding up a mirror and forcing me to look at the ugly, selfish, cruel person I'd become. Thank you for teaching me that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too smart or too charming to get caught. Most of all, thank you for showing me mercy when you had every reason not to. I spent 6 months in prison thinking about what you said in the courthouse. You said the woman who loved me died in The Gilded Spoon. Maybe that's true, but if she's gone, I'm the one who killed her and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm different now, Eleanor. Prison changes you, but more than that, understanding what I lost changes you. I know I can't prove that to you with a letter, and I'm not asking for the chance to prove it in person. I'm just telling you because I think you deserve to know. I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping people who are struggling with debt and financial problems. It doesn't pay much, but it feels good to use my marketing skills to help people instead of taking advantage of them. It feels good to wake up in the morning knowing I'm going to make someone's life better instead of worse. I'm also going to therapy twice a week. Dr. Rodriguez says I have narcissistic tendencies and an unhealthy need for external validation. She says it's going to take years of work to unlearn the patterns I've spent my whole life developing. I'm willing to do the work. I know none of this matters to you. I know you've moved on with your life, found someone who deserves the amazing woman you are. But I needed you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. You wanted to find out if someone could love the real you. The answer is yes, I did love you, Eleanor. Not perfectly, not unselfishly, but genuinely. The problem wasn't that you're unlovable. The problem was that I wasn't worthy of loving you. Maybe someday I will be. Not for you. I know that chance is gone, but for someone else. Someone who won't make the mistakes I made. Thank you for everything, Eleanor. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it, and thank you for freeing me when I'd learned from it. I hope your life is everything you wanted it to be. Julian. I set the letter down and walked to my window. The street was still quiet, still peaceful, still normal. But something had changed inside me. For the first time in almost a year, I felt lighter, like a weight I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Julian Croft had hurt me, humiliated me, and betrayed me. But he'd also learned from it, grown from it, and become a better person because of it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than I'd expected when this whole thing started. I picked up my phone and typed a text message. Julian, I got your letter. I'm proud of the work you're doing and I'm glad you're getting help. You're right that we can't go back, but I want you to know that I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is exhausting and I'm tired of being angry. Be well, Eleanor. I hit send before I could change my mind. His response came back within minutes. Thank you. That means more to me than you'll ever know. I deleted his number from my phone, then walked to my closet and pulled out the garment bag I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were the expensive clothes, the designer jewelry, the symbols of a life I'd left behind when I decided to pretend to be normal. But I wasn't normal. I never had been. I was Eleanor Vance, daughter of a tech mogul, heir to a billion-dollar fortune, and one of the most powerful women in the country. It was time to stop pretending to be someone else. It was time to go home. ####a new purpose. The next Monday, I walked into my supervisor's office and submitted my resignation from the hospital. I told her I'd been offered an opportunity one couldn't turn down, which was true. I'd been offered the opportunity to stop hiding from who I really was. Chloe cried when I told her I was leaving. "Where are you going?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Back to where I came from." "Will I see you again?" "Of course. You're one of the few people who liked me when you thought I was nobody special. That makes you rarer than diamonds." "You were never nobody special, Eleanor. You saved lives every day." "I know. And I'll keep saving lives. Just differently." 1 week later, I stood in the executive boardroom of Vance Industries, wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than most people's cars. Around the table sat 12 of the most powerful executives in the tech industry, all waiting to hear what I had to say. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice strong and confident. "My name is Eleanor Vance, and for the past 3 years, I've been letting other people run my company while I figured out who I wanted to be." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. "I'm done figuring. It's time to get back to work." 6 months later, Vance Industries announced a revolutionary new healthcare initiative. A network of trauma centers that would provide free emergency care to anyone who needed it, staffed by the best medical professionals in the world, and funded by one of the largest endowments in history. The first center opened in the city where I'd worked as a nurse. Chloe was hired as the head nurse with a salary triple what she'd made at our old hospital. At the dedication ceremony, a reporter asked me why I'd chosen to focus on trauma care. "Because trauma changes people," I said. "Sometimes it breaks them. Sometimes it makes them stronger. And sometimes it shows them who they really are. I believe everyone deserves the chance to heal from their trauma and become who they're meant to be." "Is this initiative personal for you, Miss Vance?" I thought about Julian Croft, probably helping someone struggling with debt at his nonprofit job. I thought about the letter he'd written, the genuine remorse in his words, the man he was trying to become. I thought about the woman I'd been when I'd fallen in love with him, and the woman I'd become when he'd betrayed me. "All healing is personal," I said, a soft, knowing smile on my lips. "We're all walking around with wounds, some visible and some hidden. The question isn't whether we'll be hurt, we will be. The question is what we choose to do with that hurt. And what did you choose to do with yours?" I smiled at the camera, and for the first time in years the smile reached my eyes. I chose to use it to help other people heal theirs. Later that night, alone in my penthouse apartment overlooking the city, I received a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about your trauma centers. Incredible work. The world is lucky to have you." I stared at the message for a long time, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me, then typed back, "The world is lucky to have people willing to do better. Keep doing the work, Julian. It matters." Then I deleted the conversation and blocked the number. Some chapters of your life end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. This one ended with something rarer, redemption. Not just for him but for me too. Because the truth is, Julian Croft hadn't just shown me who he really was that night in The Gilded Spoon. He'd shown me who I really was too. I was someone who could love deeply, who could be hurt profoundly, and who could choose justice over vengeance when it mattered most. I was someone who could use power responsibly, who could turn pain into purpose, and who could build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. I was Eleanor Vance, and I was finally ready to be her. After hearing Eleanor's journey of betrayal, unexpected power, and the complex path to forgiveness, I'm genuinely curious. If you had Eleanor's resources and were faced with Julian's ultimate, desperate plea for help, what choice would you have made? Would you have shown him the same brand of mercy, or would your justice have looked drastically different? Share your thoughts below. I really want to know what you think.